You're listening to WICR, Iona College Radio.
Welcome back, Gales. I'm Rocky DePala, joined by Gregor Hope Murray, and today we're going to talk a little football. Now, Gregor, as you know, the Cincinnati Bengals defeated the two-time defending NFC champion Seattle Seahawks. What do you think about the Bengals?
Well, I'd love to say that they're for real, but it's the Bengals. They've always looked this way for pretty much the last 3 years. They come out strong at the beginning of the season, and then they lose everything. Like, they just cannot hold on to their lead in their division. I believe it was last year they had a solid lead on their division, and they somehow lost it to the Steelers at the end of the season. So I don't believe the Bengals are for real, and I'm just waiting for the point where Andy Dalton comes crashing back down to earth and we start seeing him like he was from last year. He's doing a good job this year of protecting the ball, not turning over, and doing a good job of just, getting up those points with A.J. Green and his tight end Jermaine Gresham.
I have to disagree with you. I'm officially on the Bengals bandwagon. Because I said in my segment last week, I said if Andy Dalton and company can defeat the Seahawks, I would consider them a title contender. Because I think after this victory, they can compete with Tom Brady and the Patriots. They can compete with Peyton Manning and the Broncos. And if they get it, and if the Colts can put it all together, they can compete with Andrew Luck and them.
Well, that's where it all comes down to, is how well do they compete with the big guys. And if you go back to just last...
Seattle's not a big guy enough?
I don't think...
Not a huge opponent? It's not a big opponent?
No, I don't...
opponent?
Seattle Seahawks on the road is not a big opponent. And that was true last year and the year before that. And it's especially true this year.
But also keep in mind, even though, granted, it was on the road, it was in their building, they were down 17. Coming back in the fourth quarter, so when you come down from 17 points in the fourth quarter, that has to say something about a team.
It does say something about a team, but it says something more about the Seahawks than it does about the Bengals. The Seahawks, I don't think, are at the same level that they were the last 2 years.
No. If Cam Chancellor wasn't in the lineup, then you have a point about the Seahawks. But I think this says more about the Bengals than the Seahawks.
No, because this is 17 points given up defensively. This is all given up by the Seattle Seahawks defense, the defense that for the last 2 years have dominated. And this year, they are not dominating against the good teams. And it's also just a case of, with the Seahawks, the reason why 17 points didn't win in the game is because they don't have an offense. Their offense is...
Marshawn Lynch was out too, but still, you have a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter. You're up 3 scores. The game has to be in the bag, and the Bengals just came out and showed the Seahawks and pretty much the rest of the NFL, hey, we're for real.
Look, not to take anything away from the Bengals did an excellent job with coming back in that game. They deserve the credit for that. But it takes 2 to cause a situation like 17-point lead to be lost. It's not just the Bengals, it is the Seahawks' ineptitude to finish the game and win against the tougher opponents. And I don't believe what we saw at the end of that game was a result of the Bengals being extremely good. It was a result of the Bengals being good and the Seahawks being a lot worse than everyone thinks they are.
So you're not a big believer in Andy Dalton then, right?
Oh, no. Andy Dalton has been the go-to man for the example of an average QB for the last 2 years. He's created his own term everyone likes to use around him called the Dalton line, which is if your QB is better than Andy Dalton, he's a franchise. If he's worse than Andy Dalton, he's not really worth franchising. He is the definition of like the average QB, and right now he's playing above his level, and I'll give that to him. They're playing extremely well right now. But when it comes around to the key parts of football, which is beating the tough opponents, they struggle. And
they beat the Seahawks is not a tough opponent to you.
No, the Seahawks on the road is not a tough opponent.
So you're saying if they beat them in CenturyLink Field in Seattle, that would have said something to you? Or?
If they had done that 17-point comeback on the road against the Seahawks at their home building, yes, that is much more noteworthy towards the Bengals than it is to the Seahawks. I would say the Seahawks go from being basically a 14-2 team in their own building. When they leave that building, they go on the road. They drop down to a 9-7 team. They're not an undefeatable team on the road, and that's always been the case with them. Their home field is a major advantage, to the same level that Gillette Stadium is an advantage to the Patriots or Lambeau Field is an advantage to the Packers. that's the level of advantage that they get at home, and I don't think their road versions of that team is a
Or
reflect.
how the Saints were with the Superdome.
Yeah,
That's
no,
another one.
The Saints used to be like that, and that entire aura around them is completely gone. But the Bengals, while they have done well so far, they do have one of the hardest schedules in the NFL this season, and I'm waiting for the games where they have to face some of the undefeated teams. They have to defeat both the Broncos and the Patriots, who are both lined up in their schedule.
But you have to give Andy Dalton his credit though, because you have to give kudos to him. He's stepping up. You know, he's dealing with all the criticism from the media, the Bengal fan base, you know, the people in Cincinnati. But you know, he's stepping up. You have to give him his credit.
I do give him his credit. He has in fact stepped up this year. He has shown that he has taken at least a step forward, and the question now just remains: will that step be permanent? There have been years where we've seen QBs step up, and everyone thinks, "Oh my God, they've reached the next level. They're gonna be the next big guy," and then the next year they drop off. If you remember Michael Vick when he was on
Yeah.
the Eagles, he had that one amazing game.
I think that whole season.
It started from that game, and it just went through the rest of the season, and everyone was high on him, and now he's a backup quarterback on the Steelers.
Right.
So it's one of those things, like, when you see a person step forward, you've got to see them finish. They've got to not just play well for, a quarter of the season. They have to play the entire season before they can get that credit of saying, okay, you have reached the next level.
Right. Well, the Bengals are currently 5-0, and they're pretty much at this point. I don't want to say a lock, but you have to like their chances of making the playoffs and maybe even winning the division. But there's so much football to be played, and we'll see what happens throughout the course of the season.
Mhm.
I'm Rocky DePala. He's Gregor Hope Murray. Have a great day, Gales.